I'll just frame it a bit because it'd be really interesting to hear from each person. Like, I guess we could just go in order. I mean, this is, you probably know who these people are now because I think they've all gotten up and spoken already. But Steve Feiner, Maria Lantin, Carl Rosendahl, and I'm Ken Perlin. And it's weird to hear my voice from two places. And I would like to hear everybody sort of do their little elevator pitch of like, this is why I do this. This is what motivates. This is my dream. This is like why I'm doing this and not, making money.
Well, I'm doing this because it's fun and I think it's really needed. My name is Steve Feiner. I'm a professor of computer science at Columbia. And one of the things that really drives me is the fact that I get lost easily. I'd love to be able to walk down the street and not have to stare at my phone, which I could do nowadays, or back in the older days, pull out a paper map and fumble through it. Instead, I'd like to be able to just walk, seeing the things I normally see, and at places in which I need to make a turn, for example, see a discrete little arrow overlaid in my field of view to let me know which way I'm going. I'd like to pass restaurants and see menus without having to search through the window to see whether there's a menu posted. I'd like to be able to see interesting people passing by who have things that they'd like me to know about, and not just wonder whether they're interesting, but maybe see some of those things kind of sprinkled around them as they walk down the street. I'd like to get assistance when I try to fix things that I don't quite understand and be able to go and see instructions overlaid directly on what I'm trying to fix or operate, rather than having to go and find the manual online. Nowadays it's easier because I can type in the name of the thing and I can get a PDF document, but then I have to read through the darn thing, and it probably isn't even relevant to the particular thing I'm actually looking at. So I do this because I think it's just a wonderful way to get information about the things that I want to find out about, and a wonderful way to be able to collaborate with other people. If I can see more about what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, what they're doing, than if I simply see only, hear only, and otherwise sense only the things that are directly sensible without AR.
I think my motivation has changed throughout the years, but basically I've always wanted to merge with the image. I've always wanted to be in there, starting from storybooks to stereoscopy and now VR and then AR. And yeah, the idea of delight, joy, sharing, expanding my field of view of the world, knowing more so that I can help more.
I had a great time in the 80s and 90s going from not being able to do computer animation at all to bringing characters to life on the big screen. Incredible experience, really fun, and we're at a point now where that opportunity exists again to take them off the screen and put them in the world with us. And I think it's going to be the same kind of 10, 15, 20-year journey to get there. I don't have the energy to do it as a startup anymore. So doing it in academia where again, it reminds me of the early days of PDI again, surrounded by really young, intelligent people with a lot of interest, a set of tools that they have to build half of them to make it work, with a vague idea of where this is all going to go. And it's just incredibly exciting and fun.
And they don't know it's impossible yet.
That's right, exactly.
That's why they're going to make it work. Right. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's because when I was 6 years old, I used to play with plastic toy dinosaurs with my brother in the Bronx, and I have this very clear memory, which I then see when I watch like little kids now with little plastic toy dinosaurs, of being able to play with these two hunks of plastic and just make them come to life all day and tell infinite stories and have all these adventures. And I'm thinking, okay, so I've been spending my entire adult life getting an ever closer approximation to that superpower. And I feel that once we get to this point where it's here between me and Carl or me and Maria or me and Steve or anyone, we're going to get a lot closer to being able to understand that particular joy. And I think that's probably I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's pulling me.
Childhood and fun.
Childhood and fun forever. Does anyone else want to ask a question? I could ask another one, but does anyone else want to? Framing question?
Audience, please.
Oh yeah, who is a frame? Oh, we're not allowed. We're not allowed to cross the fourth
Ooh, sorry about that.
wall. Sorry, right.
not
unless
there,
it,
though.
unless
We
it's
don't see
John.
you.
Right. Yeah.
So,
okay.
okay.
It's all augmented reality.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll ask where the inspiration for the next step and next project that you're going to do comes from.
For me, it usually comes from what we're doing right now, because we see things which aren't as good as we'd like them to be. And sometimes it'll just come from some crazy idea that some member of my lab has.
I'm working on a few different things. As you saw, a sound composition app, so I'll keep going there with AR. I'm also working on performance and AR and VR, so I'm planning a dance performance in September. And then I have another project that's about designing virtual environments, whether they be A or V or whatever, from a non-human centered point of view. So how do objects get born, live, die? What's their life cycle? What's our interaction with them?
I asked, so you have
Oh,
to
that's
answer.
right. Oh, that's right. The asker has to go last. It's like pouring the wine. Okay. Yes. Right. Okay. All right. I'm learning. All right. So I think there's two projects that I've been working on for the last God knows how many years, which are really one project, which is number one, using VR for AR. Because it's got wide field of view. So putting multiple people in the same space, hanging out in the same room as a kind of an extreme mixed reality, trying to understand the whole social interaction. Those of you who saw the Alice project or the Hologram project up there kind of got some of that today. And then the other project that I've been working on for no matter how many years, I'm not sure, is this ability, as I said earlier, to be able to draw in the air and have them come to life. And those two are converging this summer. And the first one is called Holojam, the second one is called Chalk Talk, but the idea in my head is this kind of mixture of Harry Potter and Harold and the Purple Crayon. And I think that the eventual goal for that is to understand how we could have some way of interacting with the augmented world which is the opposite of I'm pointing at menus, because we somehow develop some kind of literacy or language, and so whatever it is we do, it becomes shared expert knowledge, and I think that's more empowering to people than I'm a receiver of menu of options. And so I think there's a set of things that are driving that next step forward.
I think for me, it's a lot similar to Steve, that it's being inspired by what you're doing now, but it tends to be, I think, a leapfrogging process between technology and application. So find some interesting piece of technology, and it's all aimed in the same general direction. Figure out how to use that technology, and then that inspires a new application on that. And then you find that you've run into the boundaries of the technology, so something comes along and allows you to now do what you did before, but on a better piece of hardware that allows you to get a little farther, and that inspires something new again, and just that flipping around in circles. Spiraling up, hopefully.
So let's see, questions. What's the hardest thing you're trying to do right now?
The hardest thing is probably having a non-glitchy dance performance with technology. Definitely. Always pushing the boundaries. I mean, the phone's overheating, it's constantly a constant battle, but I actually love it.
I think it's getting real personality into the characters, but the hardest thing is dealing with field of view. It's just because it means every character has to be this big and fly.
Raising enough money from kind and enlightened corporate sponsors to allow us to do this the way it really should be done. Yeah. Much, much harder than the research itself, but definitely worth it.
I'll take that one as well, but I'll also add, for me, one of the things I'd like to be able to do is to perfectly track objects in the environment, ones that are not necessarily just sitting on the floor, ideally ones I haven't even seen before, be able to go and have people pick them up, move them around, even just rigid bodies, okay? and also be able to track people's hands as they fluidly, flexibly move around one hand, two hands, let alone with fingers doing intricate things. It's not really the research that I do, but it's a tool or a set of tools that I'd really like to have. And I have nothing right now that will work the way I want it to. The closest I get are things in which members of my lab with training can make it work for a couple of minutes pretty nicely. But I really want it so that people can just walk up and try to do stuff and not mess up.
I predict that one day they're going to develop this technology called the VPL data glove or something. I don't know. One day, I don't know. Many years in the future. Yeah.
Depth scanners that work outdoors. That would be nice, because then we could take all the stuff we're building out into the bigger real world.
Yeah. So one more question.
I have a question, but it's a really hard one, and it's self-interested. I'm actually battling with this in my mind, and it relates to what Janet was saying about, okay, it's fine, we're all optimists on this panel, obviously, because we're researchers, but how do we deal with the current trends that are not going in the direction we want? So in terms of being out in the world and having this data being completely open and how, having no control over that, how do we get a visceral feel for that, So what is the responsibility of us as academics in the world in terms of pushing for, more privacy and just a more ethical point of view and a bigger point of view, right? Like, what is time well spent?
Yeah, that is hard.
Yeah, so one feeling I have is that although there might not be something I can so much do something about, I think calling people's attention to problems, calling people's attention to the fact that when people wear lots of sensors and that information can get timestamped and georeferenced, that folks who have access to all that material can do some really interesting and scary kind of way things. So that's something I've spoken about and written about since, it's frightening to say, last century. And it's something I still haven't heard really satisfactory answers about, because my understanding is to do some really dangerous things. They're completely legal things to do, especially if the things that are being captured in public, because I'm wearing cameras, I'm looking at you, you have no right to assume that you're doing things in private, in public, and yet all the timestamp data from lots and lots of people can be taken together to make a very, very good copy of all the things that are happening as you're walking around outside.
Just data point here, I heard Steve give a really good talk about this at SIGGRAPH 98. And I think most people thought, oh, he's being paranoid. But I don't think they would think that now.
I think we don't deal with it directly on the student projects unless they're running into those walls and starting to challenge that. There are some projects that ETC has done in Pittsburgh that have addressed a lot of those things really head on that are wonderful. We haven't out in Silicon Valley, but I do teach an entrepreneurship class as an elective, and we spend 2 weeks talking about company cultures and values. And hopefully that helps a little bit.
So as we know, anytime you have a small group of people use something, there's a whole trust network. Like, the first email users, oh, we all really like each other, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, the first person who posts videos. And then at some point you get to this weird, critical size where people are strangers and they're from different tribes, and suddenly people are trashing each other's videos and sending each other spam and horrible things and hacking. So I think that's going to happen. Well, in fact, if we're all in the good scenario, that's going to happen, because that means that AR is going to be everywhere. It's going to be like everything else. And so at some point, we're going to need to put locks on our doors. And so fortunately, there is these one-way encryption, blockchain, et cetera, that deals with some of it. Hopefully, people are going to have an understanding of how and when it's appropriate to put locks on their doors, which isn't a technological problem. It's a cultural understanding problem. As this thing gets to the point where, well, there's strangers out there, and we just have to deal with the fact that it's now all of society. So, I'm not sure exactly how the details will play out, but I suspect that historical understanding of how these things have happened with other technologies that have grown exponentially will help inform those decisions. So I think since we have the no questions rule, except for us, haha.
Right.
I think we're done, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you.